Hey guys, tonight we're tracing hoofprints through the sand right up to the towering wooden gates of a medieval Persian caravanserai. You've been traveling for days across a hot and mostly indifferent landscape. There's sand in your teeth, your thighs hurt from riding, and even your camel is giving you judgmental looks. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, spice, and saddle leather. Somewhere behind you, the stars are beginning to bloom like bruises on black silk. But you're not quite safe yet, because even after crossing hundreds of miles and dodging more than one shady desert figure, you now face your greatest logistical nightmare. Where do you leave the camel? This isn't just a four-legged taxi. It's your livelihood, your inventory hauler, and let's be honest, your travel therapist. You'd rather misplace your boots than risk this beast getting stolen in the middle of the night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this sleepy little caravan travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge toward the gate, your feet squelching in your own sweat-soaked sandals. The caravanserai looms ahead like some dusty mirage, but blessedly, it's real. Stone walls, 3 meters high, patched in places with adobe and bricks. Massive wooden doors, reinforced with iron studs, stand slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. Overhead, a lantern dangles from a crooked beam, flickering like it's been powered by resentment and old oil. A gruff voice barks out from a shadowed nook beside the entrance. Name number of camels. You squint, unsure if you're being mugged or welcomed. I have one camel. Her name is Ghazala. She spits. The man grunts. They all spit. That's not helpful. Mainstream fact time, caravanserais, these fortified roadside inns were found all across the Silk Road, especially in Persia. Built roughly a day's travel apart, they were designed to give shelter to both humans and their animals, offering rest water and, crucially, protection. Not just from the desert's more natural hazards, but from its more entrepreneurial residents. And yes, camel theft was a real documented problem. Imagine a horse thief, but slower and smellier. You shuffle through the gate and into the dimly lit courtyard. Your eyes adjust, revealing a massive square layout, sleeping rooms on the upper level stables below, all centered around a dry fountain. The scent of manure, sweat, and stale onion stew greets you like a disgruntled uncle. To your left, a boy no older than 10 is sweeping camel dung into neat little piles. He doesn't look up, just mutters, "Tie her to post 7. If she kicks anyone, it's your fault." There's a rhythm to these places, you soon realize. Travelers know where to go. Camels, even more so. Ghazala trots to her designated post like she owns it. You suspect she's been here before. Maybe she's even stolen a few things herself. You tie her with a frayed rope and double knot it for good measure. Then you stand there awkwardly. Should you stay and keep watch? Trust the inn systems. Sleep on her saddle. Quirky tidbit. Some paranoid traders actually slept in the camel pens, curling up with their animals to avoid theft. Others would tie a small bell to the camel's halter and another to their own toe. If either moved, they'd wake or trip. Historians still argue whether this level of vigilance was necessary or just the symptom of desert-induced anxiety, but records suggest enough thefts occurred to justify the paranoia. After all, in those days, a camel wasn't just transport, it was capital. A man approaches, robes dusty, nose, prominent eyes suspicious. He introduces himself as the assistant to the ledger keeper and gestures toward a side alcove. Registration. Bring your token. Token. He holds up a wooden disc the size of a plum, stamped with what might be a number or possibly a drawing of a drunk elephant. You sigh and follow him, dragging your feet past a merchant snoring under a rug and a pair of bored guards playing dice with Camel. Knuckle bones. Inside the registration room is a low desk, a flickering oil lamp, and a man who looks like he's been awake since the Sassanid Empire. He takes your name, your place of origin, Ghazala's height, color, distinguishing features, and no joke how she reacts to dates. She prefers apricots, you say. He nods solemnly and scribbles in the ledger. The idea, you realize, is that if anyone tries to steal Ghazala later, they'll need this token and this description. Without both, the inn won't release the camel. You pocket the disc and head toward your assigned sleeping space. Above the stars, blink lazily. You pass a man singing lullabies to his camel. Another is whispering threats. You glance over your shoulder one last time. Still there. Ghazala meets your gaze like a judge in court. Then spits. Justice is swift. You lie down on a hard straw mat. A fan made of palm leaves stirs the warm air above your head. The sounds of the caravanserai fade slowly. Murmured prayers, the occasional bray and footsteps on gravel. You smile, just barely. The journey may be long, but tonight, you and Ghazala are home. The morning sunlight cuts through the high arches like golden daggers, and you're already regretting your decision to sleep fully clothed. The wool itched, the straw poked, and the guy in the next room had night terrors about tax collectors. You groggily rise, your limbs creaking like old hinges. Ghazala, of course, looks pristine. She's lounging near her post, one leg folded neatly, watching the sunrise with the smug serenity of a beast who didn't wake up 3 times to check if her saddlebag was still there. The caravanserai is beginning to stir. Merchants untangle ropes, servants scrub troughs, and someone shouts about a missing sandal. You wander down toward the stables, your token in hand, still half worried that Ghazala has been swapped for a less sarcastic model. But she hasn't. She even sneezes at you, like she's offended you doubted her loyalty. You inspect the tether, still tight. Mainstream fact, To prevent camel theft, many caravanserais used multi-step verification systems long before we had PIN codes or two-factor authentication. Upon arrival, travelers were issued physical markers, discs tallies, or braided tags, each corresponding to an entry in a logbook. At departure, the only way to reclaim your camel was by presenting your marker and matching a detailed description, color scars, brands, even temperament. Some places required a second witness, often another traveler, to confirm identity. Yes, this meant your neighbor in the bunkhouse might end up deciding whether you were Ghazala's true companion or just a well-dressed thief. You lead her out into the sunlit courtyard, your fingers brushing the edge of the token like it's a charm. You still don't trust the system completely. Who would? You've heard rumors of camel thief syndicates who forge tokens, bribe staff, or even hypnotize camels. That last one's likely nonsense, or brilliant marketing. Quirky tidbit: one inn in Yazd reportedly dyed each guest's camel with a streak of temporary color upon arrival, blue, yellow, red, using a plant-based paste that faded after 2 days. It made matching easier and theft harder. It also turned many proud beasts into reluctant walking rainbows. Ghazala thankfully avoided the paint. You suspect she would have sued. The courtyard's fountain sputters to life, wheezing and groaning before finally producing a gurgle of water. A boy fills a jug and gestures toward a shaded trough where the camels drink. Ghazala saunters over with the entitlement of a minor empress. You follow, brushing sand from your sleeves, taking in the architecture around you. The caravanserai is a marvel, simple, symmetrical, but purposeful. Arched ceilings to funnel wind, thick walls for insulation, raised sleeping quarters to avoid damp ground, and hidden in the geometry, a deeper sense of order. Historians still argue whether the design of caravanserais evolved purely for function, or whether it reflected a more spiritual worldview. After all, many resembled mosques or palaces in miniature. Were they just way stations or small sanctuaries? You wouldn't call it holy exactly. But in the heart of nowhere, even order feels sacred. A shout interrupts your thoughts. Across the yard, two traders are arguing near a dappled white camel. One insists it's his. The other waves a token. The innkeeper steps in like a referee at a wrestling match. This happens more than you'd think, which is why, brace yourself, some caravanserais installed early versions of camel checkpoints. That's right. Before you could leave, your beast had to be led through a corridor where officials double-checked your token, your description, and sometimes even the camel's reaction to your voice. If the camel spit refused to follow or tried to eat your sleeve, suspicion was raised. Some places even used camel branding, registries, scrolls, or tiles recording symbols etched into camel skin, much like livestock tags today. Each symbol matched a clan, family, or tribe, helping verify ownership. You glance at Ghazala. Her brand, a simple crescent over a dot, is still visible behind her shoulder. Faded, but clear, your clan symbol. You wonder how many people in this courtyard would recognize it. You don't want to find out, because the desert is still lawless in parts, and camel theft, while risky, is also wildly profitable. A healthy female, like Ghazala, she's the equivalent of a second-hand luxury car. Maybe not flashy, but reliable, durable, and on a good day, she won't kick you in the throat. The fountain gurgles again. A merchant limps by, clutching his foot and muttering about your demon beast. You give Ghazala a sideways glance. She chews, slowly, innocently. The sun climbs. You settle in beside her, pressing your back against the cool stone wall, your eyes scanning the courtyard. There's a rhythm here now. People moving, camels braying. Somewhere bread bakes. It smells like heaven, or at least like something better than dry figs and regret. You hold your token like it's gold, because in this world, it kind of is. And for the first time since you left home, you exhale. A soft, full exhale. Because even in a world of dust, con artists, and mischievous livestock, someone somewhere took the time to invent a system, one that remarkably works. By midday, the sun is officially trying to murder you. You slink along the wall's shadow, hugging every inch of shade like it's your inheritance. Ghazala, unfazed, stretches in the courtyard like a house cat. She's clearly evolved beyond such mortal concerns as heat stroke. You glance toward the watchtower at the caravanserai's corner. It's not tall, just high enough for a guard to keep an eye on the perimeter and the stables. The man stationed there lazily swings his legs, half dozing in the sun, spear balanced against his shoulder like a forgotten broom. Still, the symbolism is clear. We're watching. Mainstream fact: Persian caravanserais employed guards, or Raban, who not only oversaw safety from external threats like bandits, but also monitored internal affairs. Yes, that included deterring camel theft. Their job descriptions were bizarrely modern surveillance, conflict resolution, sometimes veterinary assistance, and when necessary, interrogation. And their methods, surprisingly sophisticated. Some inns used check-in ledgers with color-coded annotations. Black for regular guests, red for known troublemakers, green for VIP caravans. If a guest had a sketchy reputation or arrived with too few witnesses, that red mark guaranteed extra scrutiny. Think of it as the ancient Yelp review, only you didn't get to write your own. You remember your own check-in from last night. The keeper took your name, scribbled something in a leather-bound journal, and handed you a tag with a hole punched through the corner. 1 hole, solo traveler. 2 holes, small caravan. 3 holes meant you were probably traveling with a portable silk bazaar and 50 goats. Your single hole tag now hangs from your belt like a reminder that no one's got your back. Except, arguably, the camel. Still, you're not completely alone. You've been sharing bread and gossip with an old man named Farhad since dawn. He's traveling south to sell glass beads made in Shiraz. His camel is named Bibi and has a limp. Farhad says it's from heartbreak. Quirky tidbit. One Persian folktale claims that camels can smell betrayal and will deliberately stumble or limp when their owners are unfaithful or deceitful. You decide not to ask Farhad too many follow-up questions. Farhad squints at you from beneath his wide-brimmed felt hat. You sleep okay? You grunt. Straw pillow was conspiring against me. He nods solemnly. They do that. You both stare at your respective camels, who are now side by side at the trough, chewing in sync. It's oddly touching. Then, just beyond the stables, something catches your eye. A square cut into the courtyard's far wall, small, deliberate, covered with a wooden screen. You wander over and realize it's the camel checkout station. This is where it happens, the final verification before departure. The screen is slatted, allowing both privacy and airflow. Behind it, you hear a voice gently questioning a traveler. What is the name of your animal, Delbar? And how long have you owned her? 3 years. And what color was she when born? You blink. These are not questions a thief answers with confidence. Historians still argue whether this level of scrutiny was standard across the empire or reserved for major trade hubs. Some accounts suggest smaller inns relied purely on local trust networks, while larger establishments developed formal exit rituals, including camel whisperers who could tell if a beast was anxious around its real owner. A boy walks by with a tray of water jugs. He offers you one without looking up. You take it gratefully and realize how dry your throat had become. The heat doesn't shout, it saps. You sip slowly, listening as the next traveler is questioned. What does your camel do when frightened? She snorts and spins in a circle. The voice hums thoughtfully. You don't hear the final verdict, but moments later, hooves clack across the stone, and a camel is led out the main gate. Farhad joins you with 2 flatbreads wrapped in cloth. They asked me once what Bibi dreams about, he says, chuckling. I told them she dreams of figs. They liked that. You raise an eyebrow. Does she? She prefers apricots, but fig dreams sound more romantic. You take the bread, grateful. It's still warm, slightly sour, studded with herbs. You chew in silence, watching 2 guards joke near the entrance. One has a lute slung over his back. Guard shifts here are long. The combination of vigilance and boredom turns many of them into amateur philosophers or terrible musicians. One inscribe once noted, on odd nights, the guards debate the stars. On even ones, they invent new lyrics to praise camels. Neither activity improves morale. Back at the fountain, Gazala is napping again. You suspect she's unionized. You close your eyes just for a second and lean against the stone. The sun, finally sliding westward, loses some of its sting. The courtyard quiets. Bells jingle. Water gurgles, and you begin to understand. All this security, all these protocols, it's not just about animals. It's about preserving motion. If people feared theft, at every stop trade would halt. journeys would shrink, trust would evaporate. So, the caravanserai isn't just a building, it's a promise that your journey can pause but not unravel, that your camel will still be there, that you can rest. By late afternoon, the caravanserai glows like a kiln. Even the shadows radiate heat. The stones under your sandals seem to grumble with each step, daring you to walk barefoot. You consider it for a half-second and wisely decline. Ghazala, meanwhile, has claimed the single coolest patch of shade behind the stables, tucked herself in like royalty, and is now snoring through her nose. You wander aimlessly through the stone corridors, running your fingers along the mud brick walls. Each one has its own peculiar fingerprint ripples, from the mason's trowel pebbles, smoothed by ancient rains. A patch here and there, where time has tried to erase, but failed. The walls have seen things. You're just passing through. Mainstream fact. Persian caravanserais weren't just for travelers and their animals. They were the empire's postal hubs, gossip mills, medical clinics, and sometimes makeshift courtrooms. The Chapar Khaneh system, established by the Achaemenids and refined by later dynasties, used these inns as relay points for royal dispatch riders with fresh horses and tightly coordinated schedules. As you step into one of the interior alcoves, you notice a strange pattern carved into the ceiling, interlocking geometric stars, 12-pointed, nested within hexagons. The symmetry is too perfect, and for a brief moment, you feel like you've stepped into a math equation with a pulse. A teenage boy appears beside you, seemingly from thin air. Pretty, huh? You jump slightly. They always like hiding the most sacred things above eye level, you mutter. He grins, keeps people looking up. You glance at him. You work here, I sweep, I spy, I collect stray socks. Also, I guard camels. Impressive resume. He bows with exaggerated elegance. You learn his name is Naveed. He's lived here since he was 8. Says his father left on a spice caravan and never returned. The keeper gave him a broom and a mat and never asked for more. You sit with him beneath the ceiling stars, and he begins telling stories that sound more like legends. One night he says a merchant tried to sneak out with someone else's camel, but the camel stopped in the gateway and refused to move, sat down, screamed, wouldn't budge until the rightful owner arrived. Quirky tidbit. Some inns tied small bells around camels' necks, not for noise, but for rhythm. Every camel walked with its own peculiar cadence, and owners could identify their beast by sound alone. Camel song was a form of identification more reliable than paperwork in a world where most travelers were illiterate. You wonder what Ghazala's rhythm is. Something sleepy and slightly sarcastic, probably. Naveed says he once spent an hour trying to chase a thief who had taken a donkey, not a camel. A donkey. The thief tripped into the dung heap and had to be carried away, half-conscious. The donkey never forgave me for laughing, he says with mock solemnity. As the light begins to slant deeper, you hear the distant metallic clack of the night gate being prepared. Caravanserais often had two phases open: daylight trading and secure nighttime closure. After sunset, no one was admitted without specific approval from the keeper. Gates were locked with heavy beams carved from cedar or walnut, slid into iron brackets so thick they looked like they could hold up a fortress wall. Historians still argue whether the gates were symbolic protection or true deterrence. Some say the real defense lay in community scrutiny. You couldn't make a move inside without someone noticing. Others point to occasional attacks where these very gates held back raiders just long enough to save everyone inside. You return to the central courtyard. A bell rings softly. Not an alarm, just a signal that the evening meal is being set out. You find Farhad already seated near the well, arranging dates in a circle on a platter, like edible soldiers. Tactic for slowing down guests, he explains. They eat too fast. They leave too soon. You sit beside him, and he offers you a small dish of cucumber yogurt, sprinkled with mint. Refreshing, sharp, honest. Behind you, Ghazala snores louder. And then comes a surprise. A camel procession arrives, 7 in total, each adorned in woven tassels and copper medallions that flash orange in the last light. The lead camel carries a small cage with a bright green parrot who squawks something indelicate in a dialect you don't recognize. The caravan is from Herat. They've brought saffron indigo and somehow fresh pomegranates. The inn erupts into motion. Some visitors run to greet old friends. A boy sells fig pastries from a basket. 2 scribes begin copying invoices by lamplight. And amid the chaos, the gate closes. Not with a bang, but a soft, definitive thunk. Outside, the desert will soon darken into mystery. Inside, the caravanserai becomes a world unto itself, sealed, humming with stories, kept alive by the rhythm of camel bells and warm bread. You finish your yogurt. Farhad sighs. Naveed winks. And somewhere in the stable, a camel dreams of figs. Night at the caravanserai is a velvet cloak thrown over the world. The sun surrenders without protest, and suddenly you're surrounded by oil lamps, firelight, and the soft hush of a place catching its breath. Ghazala is curled in her usual lump, breathing as deeply as a monk in meditation. You're sitting on a mat in a shaded corner sipping tea, so strong it could wake the dead, or at least mildly agitate them. Inns like this weren't just stops. They were little cities, wrapped in stone, with their own hierarchies, rhythms, and gossip. Every space had a logic. Travelers in the outer wings, nobles in the upper chambers, merchants near the gate for quick loading, and animals in the eastern quadrant, where wind direction spared guests from less poetic smells. Mainstream fact: security was a prime function of Persian inns. Thick walls, limited entrances, interior courtyards, and elevated watch points weren't just design flair. They were strategic. Bandits rarely attacked a well-built caravanserai, knowing they'd face not only defenders, but dozens of witnesses who could ruin their reputations faster than any blade. You glance up at the tower near the gate. A watchman is there, just a silhouette against the stars, moving slightly every few minutes to scan the courtyard below. A small bell hangs beside him for warnings or alerts. You imagine the sound, sharp, sudden enough to send every guest scrambling like pigeons startled in a bazaar. Naveed appears beside you again, carrying a lopsided bundle of dates and a pocket full of riddles. Want to know how we really stop camel thieves? Traps, you guess? Hidden spikes, threats of terrible poetry. He laughs. Better. We use camel gossip. You raise an eyebrow. He explains if a guest tried to act suspiciously, lingering too long by the stables, asking too many questions, word would spread, not official reports, but whispers. Innkeepers had an informal network of trust, rumor, and reputation, where currency passed from one roadside haven to the next, like heirlooms. Quirky tidbit. There were even known camel sniffer specialists, odd but skilled individuals who claimed they could detect if a camel had changed handlers recently by sniffing its neck or watching its gait. Were they reliable? Debatable. Were they feared? Absolutely. Farhad joins the conversation, wiping oil from his hands. I once saw a thief try to swap name tags on two camels. Camels have name tags. Of course, leather plates, usually with a stamped emblem or calligraphy. He tried to switch them, but the camels wouldn't stand still. One kept turning in circles, the other tried to bite him. What happened? Let's just say he ended up with a very public limp and a lifetime ban from every inn east of Shiraz. You take another sip of your tea and let your gaze wander. The walls of the caravanserai are still warm from the day's heat, and the stone glows gold in the lamplight. From one balcony, a woman strums a lute, gentle, slow notes that seem to evaporate before reaching the far end of the courtyard. Someone is baking flatbread nearby. The scent char cumin fresh dough crawls across the stones like a creature of comfort. Historians still argue whether these inns were more vital for commerce or for culture. Some say they were simply economic arteries. Others insist they were the empire's true courthouses, where arguments, debts, marriages, and betrayals were played out under watchful walls. The truth is probably both. You stand stretching and walk slowly toward the stables. Inside, a few camels snort softly in their sleep legs, folded beneath them like giant furry furniture. Ghazala gives you a lazy side eye, then closes it again. On a post nearby, you spot a relic, an iron hook hung with a wooden plaque. Its inscription is faded but legible. Trust is the chain no thief can break. You smile. Poetic, perhaps, but also practical. A well-run inn wasn't just a building. It was a net of relationships woven tight, passed down, rarely spoken of, but very real. Back in the courtyard, someone has started to sing. Not a performance, just a hum turned into melody. A mother, maybe, or a traveler who sings when he can't sleep. You lie down beside your pack. Let the sound drift. Let the walls hold you. And let the camels, honest, stubborn, oddly wise, stand silent guard under the stars. The second night watch begins. Somewhere, a soft bell rings one chime, 2 seconds apart, then silence. It's the signal used across dozens of caravanserais, a gentle confirmation that the first guard is handing over responsibility to the next. No alarm, no shouting, just the simple musical baton passing of tired men who know too well the price of sleep. You stir from your mat just enough to notice the change in energy. A flickering lamp is relit on the western wall. The old guard, a man with a limp and a cane, nods at his younger replacement, who pulls his turban a little tighter before ascending the wooden watchtower stairs. Mainstream fact, caravanserais operated on rotating security shifts throughout the night, dividing time into watches, usually lasting 3 to 4 hours each. Guards were often hired locally paid in both coin and provisions, and selected more for loyalty than brute strength. They were trained to know every corner of the grounds, every regular guest, and every trick known by the camel thieves of Persia. You decide to observe the process. From your shadowed spot by the water basin, you watch as the new guard reaches the top. He doesn't sit. He paces quietly but deliberately, as if rehearsing a forgotten dance step from a long-ago youth. Every few minutes, he glances down at the courtyard, then out toward the road. "Do they ever fall asleep?" you whisper to Naveed, who has quietly appeared beside you again, like a ghost with snack privileges. "Oh, sure," he grins. "The bad ones do. The good ones sleep in the afternoon and drink enough tea to make a mule jittery. There's a system in place here, far more intricate than a few men with sticks. For instance, guards carry bells, yes, but not to sound alarms, like in dramatic poetry. They ring them once at the start and end of a shift, and once more at random halfway through to prove they're still awake. If a bell doesn't ring when expected, it raises eyebrows. And if 2 in a row go silent, someone is sent to check. Quirky tidbit. In one famous caravanserai near Tabriz, guards were once replaced by a rotating group of mule handlers with insomnia who volunteered in exchange for discounted lodging. They reportedly made better security because they were cranky, suspicious of everything, and already awake at odd hours. The inn became so safe, it was nicknamed the place of no regrets, though some said it should have been called the place of no sleep. Back in your courtyard, the rotation continues. The perimeter is walked. Doors to the outer alley are checked 3 locks each, none matching, just to confuse anyone foolish enough to plan ahead. At the camel pens, a stable boy sits cross-legged, half dozing, but holding a broom. Not much of a weapon, but it sends a message: I may be young, but I will thwack you if needed. Historians still debate how standardized these security measures were. Some argue that only imperial-funded caravanserais, those built along the king's highways, had such rigid guard systems. Others insist that even village inns developed equally complex routines shaped by generations of experience and local fears. Likely both are true. What matters is that in this place, at this hour, The system hums like a well-tuned instrument. You look toward the main gate. It's massive, 2 slabs of wood, studded with iron, hinged like jaws, and barred from the inside, with a beam so thick it looks like it once held up a ceiling. Every few hours, a guard taps it to check for tampering. Just a knock-knock, nothing theatrical, but enough to signal that all is well. And then the small details emerge. A cat slinks along the edge of the camel pen tail, high. A merchant snores rhythmically behind a shuttered window. The night guard stops and squints into the darkness beyond the walls, pauses, then moves on. It's in these moments that you feel the quiet genius of Persian design. Not grand halls, not soaring towers, but peace enforced by ritual passed on in torchlight and kept alive by the cautious steps of watchmen with bells. Navid finally yawns. You know, he mutters, camel thieves hate nights like this. Too many ears, too many routines, too many people pretending to be asleep while actually listening. You lie back once more and close your eyes. Around you, a rotating cast of guardians keeps the shadows at bay, not because they crave justice or glory, but because they too need a safe place to sleep. The third watch drapes itself over the caravanserai like a weighted blanket. The earlier tension eases, not because danger has passed, but because everyone still awake has accepted that if something's going to go wrong, it will do so very quietly. You sit beneath a rust-colored lantern hanging from the central archway. Its glow casts soft light across the stone floor and flickers faintly as a breeze tiptoes through the courtyard. A few camels snort and shift in their pens, jingling their nose harnesses as they adjust their weight. One of them belches. You try not to take it personally. You glance upward. There it is, a square wooden platform elevated by 4 thick beams, one in each corner of the inn's courtyard. The watchtower. It's not tall enough to be impressive, just tall enough to see over the walls. A man is up there again, adjusting his sash, turning slowly like a human weather vane. Mainstream fact. Persian caravanserais often included rudimentary watchtowers or elevated stations, especially along major trade routes like the Royal Road. These weren't fortresses, but rather raised wooden or stone structures just high enough to offer a full 360-degree view over the walls and entrance. Some had rotating duty guards stationed with torches. Others used signal fires or lamps to communicate with nearby settlements. This one has a metal dish nailed to one corner. It's blackened from soot and probably hasn't held food in years. You learn it's used to reflect torchlight in a certain direction toward the eastern gate, if trouble's spotted toward the camel pens, if anything goes missing. No shouting, no whistles, just a flash of reflected firelight and a trained response. It's not foolproof, but it's clever. You step out a bit further, taking in the lamp placements along the walls. They're not uniform. Some are eye level, others higher, staggered in height to create shadows that move. It turns out this is intentional. The constantly shifting shadows deter thieves who can't tell where movement is real and where it's just a trick of the light. Quirky tidbit. At least one caravanserai is rumored to have employed a trained mongoose. Its job, to scurry through camel pens at random intervals, making sudden movements and drawing attention. This security mongoose became such a local legend that merchants left it dried figs wrapped in silk. It eventually ran away, or perhaps retired to a farm, as all good security mongooses do. Back at your inn, the current night guard descends the tower, feet steady on the ladder, despite the slick wood. He circles the pens once more. A few other merchants are now visible, one standing near the water trough, gently brushing his camel's side, while muttering something about raisins and ungrateful beasts. Another leans on the courtyard wall, eyes glazed, probably composing tomorrow's complaint letter to someone's grandmother. Then the wind picks up. It doesn't howl, but it does nudge the gate with a low groan. A thunk follows something heavy, bumping the wooden bar from the outside. You feel your pulse rise. The guard freezes hand already near the lantern. You instinctively stop breathing. Then, nothing. No follow-up. No voices. Just the wind again. Historians still argue whether these moments of threat were exaggerated in later retellings. Some say camel theft was rare, even in high traffic zones. Others believe that most thefts went unreported, either out of shame or bribery. A third group argues that inns intentionally overbuilt their security, not because they needed it, but because perceived safety attracted more guests, the medieval version of 5-star reviews. Whatever the truth, in this moment, you feel it. The silence, the edge, the elaborate theater of safety built from architecture, light timing, and more than a little paranoia. You walk slowly to the camel pens and rest a hand on the post. The rope securing your animal is thick braided with alternating strands, one dyed red, one yellow, and one a strange bluish black. You remember being told this isn't just decoration. These colored braids act as identifiers, a system that's hard to replicate quickly without drawing attention. Like luggage tags for hairy ships with humps. Navid is beside you again. You're not sure how he does that. Do you ever worry someone's watching you from beyond the walls? You ask, meaning it only half seriously. He squints out into the dark. Always. But that's why I pay extra for the lantern near my camel. And the lamp boy who naps with one eye open. He waves toward a young boy sitting nearby with a stick across his lap and one sandal off. Is he a guard? A groom? A child who wandered in and decided to stay unclear? But he sees you and nods just once like you're part of the system now. You smile and retreat. Another bell rings, this time from the opposite tower. The shift is halfway done. No alarm. No missing camels. Just the low thrum of watchful silence, punctuated by the occasional fart from your animal and a squeaky camel yawn that sounds eerily like a door hinge. You return to your bedroll, trusting that the lamps, the tower, and the weirdly alert 12-year-old will keep you safe until dawn. dawn is not yet visible, but its whisper is felt. The temperature drops ever so slightly, not enough to raise goosebumps, but enough to make the canvas of tents and camel blankets flutter differently. You're not sure if you actually slept or just drifted between stages of shallow awareness, lulled by camel grunts, guard footsteps, and the metallic clink of lantern chains tapping in the wind. Then a sound that doesn't belong. 3 light knocks, paused, then 2 more. It's not loud, but in a place where routine is sacred, the unfamiliar sticks out like a cut thread. You sit upright, immediately, looking toward the eastern gate. No movement, but others have heard it too. A few heads rise from mats. A merchant clutching a copper teapot freezes mid-pour. Mainstream fact, signal codes using knock patterns were sometimes adopted in larger caravanserais, especially those built near cities or trade centers. Trusted travelers or messengers might use a unique pattern to identify themselves for late-night entry without rousing the entire staff. These codes were agreed upon in advance and changed regularly, often tied to specific trade guilds or families. Tonight, however, the pattern is unfamiliar. The head guard, now an older man with a thick gray beard and a curved dagger at his side, approaches the gate. He pauses, looks up at the mirror dish nailed to the watchtower. The boy up there gives a slow shake of his head. He's seen nothing. No torch, no figure, just wind and wall. The guard knocks back. 2 beats. Silence. Then 1. He waits. Nothing. That's all he needs to confirm. No response means no entry. He walks away, visibly tense, but confident in the system. You realize something profound. Not every door must be opened, even when someone is polite enough to knock. Quirky tidbit. One notorious tale tells of a thief who trained a bird to tap out the opening signal on a caravanserai gate. The guard opened it just enough for a human hand to slip through and unbolt the door from the inside. It was only discovered because the bird got drunk one night after stealing fermented dates and began tapping wrong rhythms on every door in town. Back in the courtyard, you watch how quickly the energy resets. The guards continue their route. Merchants rewrap their blankets. A man softly tunes a sitar testing strings while murmuring an old folk song, but the air hasn't forgotten. That knock lingers, invisible but real, like dust that won't settle. You walk toward the camel pens, partly to distract yourself, partly to admire how thoroughly they're secured. There are 3 kinds of knots here. The first, a slip knot, is deceptively simple, easy for the handler to release in one tug. The second is a braided loop woven around a peg that's driven deep into the ground. And the third, you notice it now on the oldest camel's post, is something more intricate, a triple wrap twist locked through a narrow iron ring embedded in the stone floor. That ring installed when the caravanserai was first built centuries ago. Historians refer to this detail as architectural anchoring. Some Persian inns were so devoted to the security of livestock that their animal tie-down systems were integrated into the building's foundation. No wooden peg could be sawed quietly. No loose stake could be pulled in the night. Only immovable iron and stone fused by mortar and time. You crouch and run your hand along the stone. It's cool and smooth, polished by decades of rope friction. There are scratches, some faint, some deep. A story in every groove. A night where someone pulled too hard or too fast. A thief that didn't succeed. Naveed appears again seriously. How does he do that? And watches you. That ring has held Prince's camels, he says deadpan. And also, one donkey that thought it was a prince. You grin. He continues. You know, some inns use scented oils near their camel pens. Not for perfume, for tracking. A particular blend was rubbed onto the ropes. If the animal or rope was stolen, the oil left a trace on the thief's hands or clothes. It didn't smell strong to us, but dogs could detect it. You blink. That's brilliant. He shrugs. Expensive, too. Only the fancy inns did that. Here, we trust the knots, the guards, and old men with very good ears. You both fall quiet as a gust rattles the gate again. No knock this time. Just wind. The courtyard begins to stir. Someone starts boiling water. A woman laughs softly behind a fabric screen. A trader with a crooked hat begins checking the hooves of his animals, lifting each one with a tired grunt and setting it down with reverence. And overhead, the very first faint blue hint of dawn touches the sky, barely noticeable, but unmistakable, if you've been watching for it. You walk back to your sleeping mat. Not because you're tired anymore, but because it feels right to lie down and let the night pass all the way through. The gate never opened. The camels never moved. And a knock unanswered has faded into the morning like a question no longer needing an answer. You wake not from a full night's sleep, but from a kind of sideways nap where the mind never quite loosens its grip. The sky above is no longer velvet black. It's that soft, powdery gray blue that only appears right before the sun makes its opinion known. A few stars linger obstinate. The lanterns have all been extinguished, leaving faint wisps of smoke drifting into the morning. And there's already a line for breakfast. You shuffle toward it like a camel, still half dreaming, drawn by the smell. Roasted barley, flatbread, gently warmed goat's milk, and something sharp onions or pickled turnip, maybe. You don't need much, just enough to trick your stomach into thinking it's loved. You get a square of bread and a scoop of mashed lentils with cumin, then find a spot on the low ledge of a wall to eat. Mainstream fact. Caravanserais were not just overnight shelters, they were full-service ecosystems. Many employed permanent cooks who rose before dawn to feed merchants' guards and stable workers. Meals were designed to be filling fast and travel-ready, often centered around lentils, chickpeas, dried yogurt, kashk, or portable breads like nani barbari. Naveed sits down beside you. his own bread folded like a letter. "You know the trick to eating well on the road?" he asks. "Marry a cook," you offer. He grins. "That helps." But no, the trick is to always ask what the guards are eating. If they won't touch it, you probably shouldn't either. You both eat in silence for a moment, watching a caravan prep for departure. The camels are being loaded with improbable bundles, spices, dyed cloth, bolts of silk. One merchant carefully unwraps a bronze astrolabe and checks it against the horizon, muttering. It's not glamorous, this daily shuffle, but there's a kind of orchestrated rhythm to it that feels strangely comforting. Every gesture, tightening a saddle, folding a tent, pouring water over a sand-covered boot, is part of a choreography of necessity. Quirky tidbit. Some caravanserais hired a professional waker-upper, usually a young boy with a loud voice and even louder sandals, who would walk the grounds just before sunrise, clapping or singing specific verses. It was both a service and a punishment. Many inns paid these boys in food, and some considered the job a rite of passage. Survive a year of waking sleepy traders, and you earn the right to sleep in yourself. You finish your bread and stretch. A trader nearby is debating whether to trade a roll of Damascus silk for a bag of pistachios. Another is desperately trying to retie his saddle without waking his hungover companion. There's laughter, grumbling, and the soft hiss of boiling water spilled on stone. As you rise to begin your own day, you pass a wooden board nailed to the wall near the inner gate. It's covered in charcoal scribbles, names, directions, tiny diagrams of who owes whom, what. You squint and realize it's an informal ledger left for travelers to update or reference as they crisscross trade routes. One corner reads, "Amir owes Abbas 3 bolts of red silk deliver to Herat." Another simply says, "Don't trust the man with the silver flute." Historians still argue whether these makeshift ledgers had legal weight. Were they binding contracts, casual reminders, coded messages? Some suggest they were backed by trade guilds or informal merchant courts, while others believe they functioned more like communal memory scratch paper honesty in a world without notarized receipts. You run your fingers over the marks. Some are fading, others freshly drawn. Names, debts, destinations. This wall holds the ghosts of 1,000 trades most fulfilled, some forgotten. You add a mark of your own, not a debt, just a name and date. A kind of proof that you were here, that you existed between walls, if only for a night. As you turn back toward the courtyard, the gate begins to creak open for the first caravan of the day. Sunlight spills in like a declaration. And somewhere inside you, another door swings open too. You follow the dust trail of the departing caravan as it winds through the now open gate, the rising sun throwing long golden shadows behind each camel. The day has officially begun, not with a trumpet or a bell, but with the soft thunk of hooves against packed earth and the rustling clatter of tin containers brushing against saddle frames. But you're not leaving just yet. You've got your eye on something, or rather, someone. There's a man loitering near the camel pens, leaning too casually on the enclosure wall, arms crossed, head tilted. He doesn't carry any gear, no water skin, no pack, no signs of actual travel. His robe is just a little too clean for someone who claims to have ridden in last night, and every few minutes his eyes flick just briefly toward a particular camel, a tall, cinnamon-colored beauty with one torn ear and a brass nose ring shaped like a crescent, the one you tied up last night. You drift closer, pretending to be engrossed in brushing camel hair off your robe. He notices you, gives a slight nod. "Nice animal," he says, in a voice so smooth it could sell sand to the desert. "Thanks, you say flatly, not smiling. He shrugs and looks away, but his fingers are still fidgeting in that way only thieves or nervous musicians do. You file his face away in memory, a small scar under one eye, the kind that might come from a slipping stirrup or a poorly timed betrayal. Mainstream fact, camel theft was rampant in the medieval Islamic world, and inns, especially those near trade arteries like the Silk Road, had to evolve sophisticated anti-theft tactics. Some hired undercover decoys to pose as travelers, watching for suspicious behavior and working with the innkeeper to trap would-be thieves in the act. Other caravanserais placed dummy camels with intentionally loose restraints to bait opportunists. You wander toward the far end of the courtyard, where a short man in a patched wool tunic is tending to a trough. He has the posture of someone who's spent his life avoiding eye contact but seeing everything. This is Yusef, the courtyard steward, and the unofficial nerve center of the entire operation. You lean in. The man by stall 7, with the black turban. Yusef doesn't look up. I know he mutters. He came in with no token, said his camel died, twice. You glance back toward the suspicious loiterer. He's still there, still definitely not watching your camel. Plan, you ask. Yusef sighs. Wait till he tries something. Then I let Naveed's apprentice scream like he stepped on a scorpion. Ah yes, the apprentice. A boy of perhaps 13 with a voice that can break both glass and tension. The perfect alarm system in a pre-electric world. Quirky tidbit. Some inns took it a step further, rigging trap stalls with spring-loaded mechanisms that triggered a loud clanging bell, or even dropped a small gate momentarily, trapping the thief with the camel he was trying to steal. One Persian text even describes a hissing pipe, an early alarm system made of sealed gourds and air pressure valves. If tripped, it let out a high-pitched shriek that could be heard across the courtyard. You make a slow circuit around the pens, pausing to tie your own scarf tighter and pat your camel's neck reassuringly. He grumbles, annoyed. You whisper his name. He grumbles again, louder. A loyal beast, but not one for flattery. You glance over. The man in the black turban is gone. You freeze. So does Yusef. Then from the leftmost gate comes a clatter, like someone knocking over a stack of tin pans. A moment later, Navid's apprentice emits a scream, so high-pitched and theatrical you half expect it to summon the spirits of long-dead traitors. Within seconds, 3 guards are sprinting. The gate is slammed shut, and the man in the turban is being marched toward the front office, trailed by a small audience of onlookers, pretending not to be interested. Historians still argue whether these sting operations were coordinated by local law or purely the result of self-organizing merchant communities. Some texts describe them as civic pacts between travelers and innkeepers, unofficial alliances to protect shared assets. Others suggest a more formalized system with rotating schedules, surveillance roles, and even written codes of conduct. You exhale, pat your camel once more, and retreat to a shady corner where a bowl of dates and a warm glass of cardamom tea are waiting. It's not even noon, and already the day feels like it's earned its own chapter. The man in the turban will be dealt with, possibly turned over to a nearby village elder, or just banned from this network of inns for life. Either way, he won't be coming near your beast again. For now, your camel is safe, but you know better than to relax for long. On the road, even trust has a curfew. You press the teacup to your lips, inhaling the floral spice of cardamom as the courtyard calms again, returning to its steady rhythm of hooves, laughter, and the occasional snore from a sun-drenched bench. The drama of the morning, the almost theft, the apprentice's falsetto alarm, the stifled chuckles from fellow travelers is now part of the inn's quiet legend. But the camel pens aren't the only places that demand clever vigilance. You shift your gaze toward the upper rooms, those wooden shuttered balconies that line the second floor of the caravanserai. Behind those painted doors lie the private chambers, often rented by noble scholars or anyone rich enough to demand a mattress with stuffing and a lock on the door. But even among the well-dressed and well-fed security was a concern. Mainstream fact: Persian caravanserais featured upper rooms specifically for VIP guests, offering better ventilation, more privacy, and heightened security. These spaces often included lockable wooden trunks, concealed compartments in floorboards, and attendants hired specifically to guard valuables. In some cases, innkeepers even kept records, rudimentary ledgers of guest items to prevent disputes or quiet theft. You climb the creaking wooden stairs, slowly trailing your fingers along the carved banister. Up close, the craftsmanship is even more impressive. Vines of inlaid walnut curl along the rail, interrupted by small metal studs that glint faintly in the sun. Security wasn't just about brute strength, it was about creating an environment of trust, which of course could be gamed. You reach the second floor and stroll the outer balcony. Most doors are closed. Some are slightly ajar, revealing flashes of color, scarlet carpets, brass incense, burners, satchels resting on clean cushions. A man stands at the far end, sharpening a long curved dagger while humming a tune far too cheerful for a man with a weapon. He nods at you. You nod back, silently, promising to stay on his good side. You stop at your own door, modest, unremarkable, but locked with a clever cross-bolt system. You watch the innkeeper install. You unlatch it and step inside. The room is small, but purposeful. A sleeping cushion, a low writing desk, a copper basin for washing, and a slotted window angled to catch both breeze and starlight. You've stashed your things carefully. Your coins are tucked in a pouch under a loose floor tile. Your papers are tied and knotted into a roll stuffed inside a hollowed-out leg of the desk. And your spare sandals, well, those are proudly out in the open, dusty and worn, because no one steals old shoes. Quirky tidbit. Some travelers intentionally planted decoy valuables in their rooms, sparkly glass gems, worn scrolls with gibberish text, or even a bronze coin dipped in honey to stick to a thief's fingers. These decoys acted both as deterrents and as identifiers. Anyone handling one could be quickly exposed during a room check. You lie back for a moment, arms behind your head. The ceiling beams above you are thick dark with age and notched with little carvings. Likely the work of past guests, names dates, doodles the occasional rude image hastily scratched out. You smile at one small design near the corner, a simple drawing of a camel wearing a crown. You wonder if the innkeeper noticed. A knock at the door. You sit up as it creaks open. It's the steward, Yusuf, holding something in his hand, a small fabric pouch with gold embroidery. He raises an eyebrow. Yours. You frown and shake your head. He sighs. Found it tied under your camel's reins. A setup. Someone had stashed something valuable, or perhaps forbidden, under your animal, hoping to retrieve it later, or frame you for its possession. Smugglers use that tactic often, especially when passing through regions with strict trade controls. Historians still argue whether such room-level deceptions were managed by lone tricksters or part of larger networks that spanned multiple caravanserais. Some suggest there were smuggling guilds, organized bodies with secret codes, hand signals, and operatives posing as travelers. Others dismiss that as over-romanticized folklore, claiming instead that solo crooks were simply inventive and well-practiced. You take the pouch from Yusuf, careful not to open it yet. Burn it, you ask. He grunts. Wait. Might be spice. Might be poison. Might be both. We'll check with the apothecary after lunch. And then he's gone already, muttering about apprentice boys who scream too much and camel thieves who don't read signs. You glance down at the pouch. Its embroidery is precise, Ottoman style, maybe, not Persian. A message, then, or a warning. You set it on the desk beside your travel journal and return to the cushion. The heat of the day is rising, seeping in through the shutters. Outside, the sounds of hammers, hoofbeats, and haggling rise in waves. But here inside this room, you feel oddly safe. It's not the lock on the door or the trick tile beneath your pouch. It's the feeling that somehow everyone here is watching for everyone else, even if only to keep the peace long enough for the next caravan to pass through. You close your eyes and drift for a moment. And somewhere outside, a camel groans. You awaken not to birdsong or bells, but the subtle scrape of woolen slippers outside your door. A servant's tread light and practice too soft to startle, but precise enough to remind you this is not your home. And that's the point. Caravanserais weren't meant to feel like home. They were stage sets, temporary theaters. And as you sit up, stretch your legs, and reach for the water jug, you remember something else. These places were as much about surveillance as shelter. You splash your face. The copper basin ripples. You glance at the embroidered pouch still resting on the desk. No one's taken it. No one's moved it. And yet, you feel keenly that you're no longer the only one aware of it. Mainstream fact. Many medieval Persian caravanserais maintained internal intelligence networks, informal systems, where innkeepers, staff, and local officials exchanged information about travelers. Suspicious behavior, unfamiliar dialects, or unregistered goods could all be quietly noted and passed along to the nearest administrative center or military patrol. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about order. You slip on your sandals and exit onto the balcony. Below the courtyard buzzes to life. Merchants hawk spices and folded silks. A boy chases a chicken. A scribe unfurls a scroll, and in the shadow of the camel pens, a robed man stands very still, watching nothing, doing nothing, at least on the surface. You descend the steps and pass the man. You don't meet his eyes, but you note the tiny silver badge clipped to his sash, a stylized lion tongue, out-tail curled, not a symbol of royalty, not military, but familiar, one of the silent kind. That's what travelers called them. The innkeepers never confirmed it, but many believe these individuals were informants employed by the local governors to monitor trade catch forgers and deter theft without ever raising a blade. Quirky tidbit. It said that the silent kind didn't just report crimes, they corrected manners. Guests who spoke too loudly, insulted the host, or flirted with married women found subtle consequences. Watery, tea, lumpy bedding, or their camel mysteriously relocated to the furthest, smelliest corner of the yard. You veer toward the dining area, a large wooden table under a canopy of woven reeds offers a modest buffet, flatbreads, dates, olives, and a clay pot of lentil stew. You nod at the steward, and he nods back, eyes flicking briefly to the pouch now tucked into your sash. He's already been told. You fill your bowl, you sit, you eat, and you listen. Around you, conversations flow in a dozen accents. A spice seller from Yazd grumbles about sandstorms. A healer from Bukhara explains the virtues of crushed coriander for digestion. Two young men debate whether it's better to bribe the guards or the tax assessors when crossing the Zagros. You eat slowly, keeping your head down. You're not here for gossip, but you've learned that in places like this, what sounds like gossip is often front-page news, just delivered over stew and flatbread instead of ink and parchment. A server refills your tea. A gentle breeze stirs the edge of the canopy. And somewhere behind you, a voice murmurs your name, not loudly, not threatening, just a sound, like the soft tap of a pebble skipping across water. You don't turn. You finish your tea. You wait. And when you stand, a folded note sits beside your bowl, tucked under your plate like a receipt. Historians still argue whether such messages were a common practice or dramatized inventions of later poets. Some claim caravanserais hosted shadow networks of resistance groups, assassins, or even matchmaking societies. Others believe these tales reflect an exaggerated sense of the caravanserai's importance, a nostalgia-heavy belief that every traveler was a secret agent and every room held a plot. You unfold the paper. 3 words. No signature. Ask Youssef. Sunset. You fold it back. Sunset is hours away. Enough time to pretend this is just another stop. That nothing waits at the horizon but more dust, more tea, and more tired camels. But as you return to your room, the courtyard swells with movement. A new caravan arrives, bright tents, tall banners, and a dozen bell-wearing camels, the kind used by government envoys or foreign dignitaries. And as the gate closes behind them, you wonder whether your note, those 3 words, was really meant for you, or if someone else will read your name tonight, out loud. By midday, the scent of cumin and sweat is thick in the air. You sit by your window, watching the courtyard transform from sleepy trading hub into a choreographed display of noise, movement, and careful ritual. The guards have repositioned. The innkeeper now walks with a little more urgency. And most telling of all, your camel has been moved, not far, just from the left side of the pen to the right. But it's tethered beside 2 larger beasts draped in patterned blankets that scream important in every thread. Their saddlebags gleam with polished brass clasps. One has a tiny silver bell woven into its harness, a sound meant to be heard, not silenced. Mainstream fact. In medieval Persia, traveling dignitaries, envoys, tax collectors, and religious scholars were assigned high-value camels that carried both cargo and symbolic prestige. Caravanserais were expected to give these animals the best placement, shade, soft ground, and proximity to guards. Misplacing one of these creatures could cost an innkeeper his license, or worse, his reputation. You step into the light. The heat hits you like a soft slap, bracing but not unkind. In the distance, someone sings in a low register, a lullaby to keep the animals calm. You make your way toward the stables and find the innkeeper already waiting. He doesn't smile. "You're insured," he says flatly. You blink. "I didn't ask for that," he nods. "But you paid for it." You pat your sash. The pouch. Of course. Quirky tidbit. Some caravanserais had optional peace of mind fees. These weren't listed, advertised, or even acknowledged. But if a merchant tipped handsomely or carried certain seals of trade, the staff would provide extra eyes. These guards Might not be official employees, they could be local youths, old men with sharp ears, or even stray dogs trained to bark at unfamiliar scents. You glance toward the far end of the stable. A boy, no older than 12, leans against the wall, chewing a reed, watching everything and nothing. His dog, a lanky, one-eyed mutt, sits at his side, tongue-lolling tail, thumping the dirt rhythmically. Your security detail, apparently. Historians still debate whether these informal insurance schemes were truly effective or just psychological comfort. The lack of formal contracts, fixed rates, and defined terms makes documentation scarce. Some scholars argue that most insured travelers were simply being watched because the innkeeper suspected them, not because he cared for their safety. Back in your room, you find a second note slipped under your water jug. Ink still wet. Different handwriting. Sunset changed. Ask before dinner. You sit on the bed. Right. Of course it changed. Everything here changes, and nothing at all. To kill time, you wander the halls. The inner corridor walls are decorated with old fading murals, lions, cypress trees, geometric patterns that seem to shimmer when you stare too long. At the far end, a tapestry hangs awkwardly askew. You adjust it, revealing a cracked mosaic behind a hunting scene. A man on horseback, bow drawn, and in the lower right corner, etched in small script, "Do not trust the stable boy." You laugh out loud. It feels good. Maybe this whole place is a joke. A dusty theater cast with camels and con men and cryptic decorators. Later, over dinner, chickpeas, dried lamb, and mint yogurt. You sit beside a man with ink-stained fingers. He says nothing for the first half of the meal. Then, as you wipe your mouth, "You're from Nishapur." Not a question. You nod slowly. Years ago. Still carry their style of knife. You pause. You don't answer. He smiles, only asking because mine went missing. 2 rooms down. Same floor. You exhale. The yogurt tastes sour now. The man leans closer. Relax. I'm not accusing. I'm offering. Offering what? Insurance. Real insurance. And just like that, the game shifts. He explains, for a fee, no fixed rate, just what you think is fair, he'll watch your camel. Not from the shadows, not with tricks, just eyes and muscle. He's part of an unofficial guild, the Keepers, who patrol the inns from Yazd to Raiyi. No affiliation, no loyalty, just professionalism. He lists testimonials, a scholar who left his books unattended for 3 nights, a caravan leader whose entire team fell ill, but every pack animal was untouched, a woman carrying royal documents who paid him with 1 emerald and a poem. Do you accept poems as payment often? He shrugs. Sometimes the rhymes are good. Quirky tidbit. Though unconfirmed by documentation, Persian folklore does refer to the unpaid guards, people who chose to protect strangers' property not for money, but for moral philosophy, personal debt, or even karmic retribution. They appear in tales often as gruff, misunderstood figures with a tragic past and a fondness for figs. You decline the offer. Politely, he nods, finishes his food, leaves a coin on the table that reads, "Trust ends where greed begins." You pocket it without thinking. Later that night, you dream not of camels or courtyards, but of bells, silver bells on collars, doors, wrists, and wind chimes. Each chime sings a different question, and none have answers. Morning arrives not with sunlight, but with stillness. The kind of hush that suggests something is waiting to happen, or just did. No cries from the stables, no clang of pots. Even the birds are late today. You sit upright and feel it. Before you see it, your pouch is gone. Not the whole sash, just the pouch, the knot sliced clean, no fray, no struggle. Whoever took it knew exactly what they were doing. You exhale through your nose. No shouting, no panic, just disappointment. But before you can rise, there's a tap at the door. Not a knock, a tap, deliberate. You open it slowly. The boy from the stable stands there, dog at his side. He says one word, "Returned." He holds up the pouch, still tied, still sealed. And then, just as simply, he walks away. Mainstream fact: some caravanserais had internal justice systems. If theft occurred, the staff and stable hands might conduct their own quiet investigations. This wasn't done out of lawfulness, but to maintain reputation. A caravanserai where goods went missing was a dying business. Returning stolen items without naming the thief was often seen as preserving face for everyone involved. You step out stunned. The courtyard is normal again, bustling, noisy, sun-drenched. A few camels grumble. A merchant haggles over glass beads. But now you're part of the quiet current beneath it all. You make your way toward the camel pen. The stable hand. The older one, not the boy, glances up and says, "Tell your friend in room 9 he owes me 2 dates and an apology." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "He accused me. Told the cook I was fencing saddles. I don't even like saddles. Too many buckles." Quirky tidbit Persian caravanserais were full of informal bartering networks. Food for secrets, blankets for gossip, apologies for favors. Reputation could be traded like currency, and a well-placed compliment might earn better hay for your animals than any gold coin. You wander past the bakery window. The cook, seeing you, offers a smile and a fig cake. "No charge," she says, "but eat it now. I don't want it stolen again." You chuckle. Again, she nods. "Last week someone lifted an entire tray, left the almonds. Who steals pastries and skips the nuts?" That's when you realize this place is a machine, not a building, not a shelter, a living machine, one made of whispers, favors, and implied debts. Theft doesn't always mean loss. Payment doesn't always mean coins. And protection rarely wears a uniform. Back in your room, you untie the pouch. Everything's there. But tucked alongside your items is something new. A single apricot pit, carved with a symbol, a crescent with a line through it. You've seen it before. It marks a guild, or maybe a family, Or maybe it's just a warning, depending on who you ask. Historians have never agreed on the function of these traveler tokens. Some believe they were signs of passage, like ancient postcards left to show where someone had been. Others argue they were threat markers, quiet ways of saying, "We're watching. Move carefully." You slip the pit into your sleeve and breathe deeply. Time to leave. Your camel, already fed and saddled, seems just as ready. As you tie your bundle to the side, the stable boy reappears, hands you a water skin and says, "North Road's cleaner this time of year. But watch the bend near the river. Bandits like that cliff." You nod. "Thank you." He hesitates. Then you dream loud. You blink. "What?" "Last night. You said a name. Twice." "What name?" He shrugs. "Didn't recognize it, but someone else might have." And just like that, you realize not even your dreams are private here. You mount the camel. The sun is high now, and the shadows stretch long behind you. At the gate, the innkeeper gives you a brief nod. "Safe travels," he says. "And next time, keep your pouch tied higher." You smile. "Next time I won't dream." He chuckles. "Good luck with that." As you ride away, the inn fades behind you, swallowed by dust and horizon. But the scent of mint tea, the sound of soft bells, and the weight of an apricot pit in your sleeve stay with you. And somewhere, perhaps, a new guest arrives already, part of the next quiet drama. The road north hums beneath your camel's hooves, a muffled rhythm of soft sand and scattered gravel. The air smells of rosemary shrubs and sunburnt stone. You've left the walled safety of the inn behind, but not its lingering effect, the strange sense that even now, far away, it's still watching you. You lean forward in the saddle and murmur your camel's name, not its real one, but the nickname you gave it that only the two of you seem to agree upon. It grunts in reply, a little offended perhaps, or maybe just tired of this whole northbound idea. Mainstream fact, medieval Persian traders often named their camels, not for sentimentality, although you might disagree, but for identification. In caravans of dozens or hundreds, names were more efficient than generic whistling. Names also helped in case of theft. You could yell Shabnam, and at least 3 heads might turn, including your camels. But some went further. You'd heard stories of camels that only obeyed a specific phrase or tone, of animals that refused to kneel for anyone but their original owner. One tale claimed a camel would only drink if a lullaby was sung in a particular dialect of Luri. And now, as you pass a crooked tree clinging to a rocky outcrop, you test the theory. Yavash Shabnam, you whisper, slowly. To your quiet satisfaction, your camel eases its gait without complaint. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's just the slope. Or maybe it remembers more than you think. You stop for a brief break near a spring, a narrow cleft in the rocks with trickling water, and the kind of greenery that makes even your camel sigh. There you meet a traveling poet, or at least That's what he says. He's older, with hair like unraveled thread and a robe that may have once been white. He sits cross-legged, tossing breadcrumbs to a bird that looks more judgmental than grateful. "You from the south?" he asks without looking up. You nod. "Stay at the caravanserai with the lion tile." You raise an eyebrow. "Yes." "Did they still lock the gates with a cedar beam?" You nod again. He sighs. "I carved that beam." Quirky tidbit. In some regions of Persia, traveling craftsmen left literal marks of authorship, small carvings, initials, or poems etched into beams, doors, or fountain stones. These weren't vanity projects. They were currency. A signature meant your work had value, and your reputation followed you like a camel's shadow. He offers you a plum. "Be careful with that pouch of yours. I got it back." He chuckles. "Then they like you, or they want something." You chew in silence, watching the bird hop closer. He says, "You ever hear of the camel who escaped?" "Which one?" He smiles. "The one who staged his own theft." You shift. "Go on." "True story," he begins, which of course means it isn't. "There was a trader, rich paranoid, always checking his coin weight and sleep-talking in numbers. One night his camel disappears from a locked stall. Ledger's correct. Tokens untouched. Gate is still shut. No witnesses. No tracks. You nod slowly. 3 days later, Camel shows up in the next town alone. No gear. No sign of the trader. Just walks into the bazaar, snorts at a spice merchant, and sits down like it owns the place. What happened to the trader vanished. Some say the camel planned it, tired of being ridden, wanted a new life. You both laugh. Historians still argue, he adds, whether it was a case of theft, abandonment, or spiritual rebellion. The camel may have simply decided to retire early. You thank him for the plum. As you saddle up again, he calls out, "Ask your camel before you go to sleep. It may dream too." You ride in silence for a long time. Then you whisper, "Do you no reply?" Just steady steps and a flick of the tail. You reach a small village before dusk. One street, 2 wells, 3 lanterns swaying in the breeze. The inn is humble. No courtyard, just a roof and an open kitchen where a woman stirs lentils in a pot the size of a wine barrel. As you feed your camel, a little girl runs up and tugs your sleeve. "Is that your real camel?" You nod. She grins. "Good. Someone else tried to claim it earlier." You blink. She points. "The man with the thin shoes. He said it answered to Farouk, but your camel spit on him." You smile. It has good taste. Inside the inn, the walls are lined with woven mats. The air smells of cloves and sleep. You take a seat near the fire and for the first time in days feel entirely at ease. Just before sleep takes you, you reach into your sleeve and touch the apricot pit. You whisper to yourself, not a name, not a spell, just a question. "Are you watching?" No answer. Just the soft exhale of a resting camel outside. And yet somehow You feel seen. You wake before the sun, stirred not by sound but a strange feeling of rhythm, like the steady beat of a drum, muffled by saddened land, a pulse through the floor, not a tremor, but something alive, breathing. Then you realize it's the camel chewing. Outside your door, the animal is rhythmically grinding what must be the driest pile of straw in Persia. The noise is absurdly loud. You open the door and squint through the gray dawn. The camel looks at you, continues chewing. You say, "You could have waited." It blinks, continues chewing. You dress and step out, letting the cool air wrap around you like a prayer shawl. Villagers are already moving, carrying baskets, opening shutters, sweeping thresholds with bundles of reeds. One man nods at you then, at your camel. "Still here?" he asks. "Only just," you reply. He grunts. "Good." The camel thief passed through again last night. Mainstream fact. In medieval Persia, camel theft was so common in certain regions that some towns maintained local watch lists of suspicious travelers. Inns were encouraged to record descriptions of guests and animals. Some even hired unofficial watchers, who were not guards but gossipers, people with a sharp eye and a sharper tongue. Their payment, usually a meal or information in return. You pack quickly, sensing the village's restlessness. You thank the innkeeper, give your camel an extra pat to little reaction, and head for the road. The landscape opens like a scroll, rolling hills, inked in dusty greens and sun-bleached yellows. Every few miles you pass a shepherd, a shrine, or a scattering of almond trees. The wind carries the scent of cardamom and iron. By mid-morning, you reach a fork, one road smooth and traveled, the other rougher, but shorter. You choose the latter. As you bump along, a voice calls out, "Lost." You look up. A man leans against a rock barefoot with a walking stick taller than he is. A flask swings from his belt. His robe is patched with at least 4 different fabrics. "Or just pretending to be brave," he adds. You stop the camel. "Neither." He grins. "Perfect. That means you're probably just stubborn." You raise an eyebrow. "And you, I'm what happens when you miss the last caravan. And the one before it. And maybe one more." Mainstream fact. Stragglers from large caravans often became temporary wanderers. Some by choice, others by misfortune. They developed a unique role in the ecosystem of the road news carriers, errand runners, informants, or sometimes just entertainers. Locals often treated them with suspicion, but traders saw their value as floating repositories of whispered truths. He walks alongside your camel as you ride. His stride is effortless, like he's done this forever. "Did you stay at the Lion Tile Inn?" he asks suddenly. You tense. "Why?" He shrugs. Word gets around, especially when someone retrieves a stolen pouch without naming the thief. You say nothing. He glances up at you. They think you're a storyteller. You snort. "I sell silk," Same thing. Both require good memory, pretty wrapping, and a little exaggeration. You almost laugh. You travel in silence for a while, then reach an abandoned way station, a crumbling square of stone with no roof but a working well. He sits, drinks, and offers you a riddle. What weighs less than a fig, yet makes a caravan fall apart, you think? A lie. He nods, impressed. Close. But no, it's suspicion. You both rest under a strip of torn canvas, someone left behind. The shade is barely adequate, but enough for your camel to collapse with a groan. The man takes something from his pouch, a carved bone disc with holes punched around the edges like a game piece or amulet. He says they use these at the gates of certain inns. If you had one, you could pass without questions. No need to sign the ledger, no token check, just a nod. You study it. Guild issue. He flips it once, catches it, then tucks it away. Something older. Historians debate whether such objects existed or are merely folklore. Some believe they were part of secret merchant societies, early versions of trade guilds with internal codes and private symbols. Others insist they were used by smugglers and spies. And some think they were tokens of gratitude given by innkeepers to guests who solved problems no one dared name. As the sun begins to descend, you prepare to move again. The man does not. I stay here tonight, he says. Long story. You nod. I've heard a few. Make sure you don't lose your pouch again, he says with a wink. You ride on, leaving him behind like a pebble dropped from a pocket, small but impossible to forget. As dusk cloaks the land in lavender, you arrive at another outpost, smaller, cleaner. A woman guards the gate. Name, she asks. You hesitate. Farouk. She scribbles it down. Business. You glance at your camel. Storytelling. She waves you through. Inside, the courtyard glows with lanterns. A musician plays something slow and haunting on a reed flute. A bowl of pomegranates sits unattended on a table. And somewhere above, the stars blink into place one by one, as if responding to names whispered long ago. You find yourself seated beneath a faded canopy of crimson and gold, the kind of cloth that once whispered wealth, but now bears the quiet dignity of use. The courtyard of this inn is unusually quiet. No shouting merchants, no stomping hooves, only the occasional jingle of a lead rope and the soft murmur of someone reciting poetry by the well. You eat sparingly, some dates, a small bowl of barley stew, and a hunk of flatbread that tastes of smoke and salt. Your camel lies just beyond the low wall, half asleep, but alert in the way camels always are, like it's ready to rise and flee should the shadow of a thief cross its flank. A man joins you at your table without asking. His robe is dark blue and lined in silver thread, but dusty at the hem. His beard is neat. His hands are ink-stained. I heard you travel from the south, he says. You nod. And that you travel alone. Another nod. Yet you haven't lost anything. You look at him, not for lack of trying. He chuckles. Then allow me to offer something you might want to lose your ignorance. You raise an eyebrow. He places a rolled parchment between you. Do you know what this is? You examine it. The seal is broken. The edges worn. A map. He shakes his head. A record of thefts. Mainstream fact. In certain regions of medieval Persia, caravanserais kept informal scrolls or ledgers detailing past incidents, not just of theft, but of disputes, illnesses, runaway servants, even strange dreams or omens. These traveler scrolls were used more like oral history with ink, and entries were added by anyone literate who had a tale worth preserving. Over time, they became both folklore and forensic tool. You unroll it. The handwriting varies wildly. Thick brush strokes, tiny crabbed lines, slanted foreign scripts, even a few drawings. You see your inn's lion tile mentioned 3 times, and beneath one entry, a familiar name, Farouk. You pause. He notices. A friend. You say nothing. He pours you tea. It smells of sage. I collect these, he explains. Not as a judge, as a listener. Stories go missing faster than camels. You smile faintly. And do you return them? I try, he says. But stories grow legs. They wander. Some return with scars. You sip. The tea is hot clean and stronger than expected. Then he leans in, voice low. Do you want to know the real trick? You wait. It's not the gates or the tokens, not the watchers or the locks. It's the story. He taps the scroll. If they think you are a merchant, you'll be robbed like one. If they think you're a mystic, they'll test you. If they think you're invisible, you'll pass through. He smiles. So the question is, what story are you telling? You sit back. The camel outside shifts. A gust of wind stirs the lanterns. Then, from across the courtyard, a woman's voice sings an old lullaby, the kind that's both cradle song and curse. The man at your table listens closely, then whispers, that song's from Sistan. You blink. So, she's not. You look over. A woman in green robes leans against a pillar head, tilted to the stars. Her hands are adorned with henna symbols for protection and travel. She's warning someone, he says. You frown. Who? Maybe you. Suddenly the camel grunts. You rise, the parchment scroll still open. In the moonlight you see it now. Not all entries are thefts. Some are warnings. You fold the scroll. Return it. The man nods and disappears, as if satisfied. You step outside. Your camel is fine, awake, alert, staring into the shadows behind the fig tree. There's nothing there, and yet the air is charged. You sit beside your animal, palm against its shoulder. You see something. No reply. But the girl from earlier, the one who mentioned a thief, appears again. This time, she carries a rock in one hand. She kneels and whispers, "He's in the well." You blink. "Who?" She points. You rise, step softly toward the stone-ringed well. its rope still and water quiet. You look in. Just water. Dark, silent, deep. Then ripples. You back away. The innkeeper appears behind you, calm. Did you drop something? You shake your head. Then, don't take anything. Either, she says, and smiles like a door being quietly shut. You return to your bedroll. Sleep does not come easily. But when it does, you dream of ledgers with empty pages, camels with wings, and songs written in ink that cannot be washed away. When you wake, your pouch is untouched, but your memory has grown heavier, and you realize the true weight of travel is not what you carry, but what you learn to leave behind. Morning arrives not with a blaze of light, but with a slow spill of gold that trickles between date palms and over clay rooftops. You wake to the low hum of voices, traders preparing their animals, mothers stoking small fires, a blind man tapping his way along the courtyard wall as he sings a line from the Shahnameh in a voice like smoke. Your camel is already awake, watching a pigeon bathe in a shallow basin. You pack silently, your body practiced now. Hands know what to do before your mind catches up. Then you find it, not something missing, but something added. In your saddlebag, nestled between a coiled belt and a pouch of almonds, a scrap of parchment rolled and tied with camel hair string. No seal, no name, just a single line. A mirror turned toward the desert still reflects the sun. You glance around. No one looks your way, but you feel seen. Mainstream fact, in Persian philosophical and poetic traditions, metaphors involving mirrors, deserts, and the sun often represented perception, spiritual clarity, and isolation. Travelers sometimes left anonymous verses for others, believing that the right words at the right moment could shape someone's path more than advice ever could. You tuck the parchment into your robe, not out of fear, but reverence. The road today is flatter traced with old caravan tracks like veins across the skin of the land. You pass a dried stream bed lined with blue stones, then a crumbling arch, a remnant of a bygone tax station. No one stops you. No one asks questions, but you notice the shift. Fewer travelers, more birds, more silence. The silence grows until it feels like a second rider matching your pace. Then a town, not on your map, no signpost, just a cluster of dome-roofed buildings and a minaret so worn it leans slightly like a tired sentinel. You approach with caution. A boy waves you in. His tunic is patched at the elbows, and he carries a flute, but no shoes. "You're early," he says. "For what?" "The story." He grins and disappears between alleys. You dismount. No one stops you, no one greets you. Either. It's a town of watchers. Every doorway has eyes behind it. Every window, a curtain that shifts just after you pass. In the central square, an old man plays chess against himself. You watch as he moves the same piece twice, one for the Black King, one for the white. Then he speaks without looking up. The thief is not the one who takes. The thief is the one who leaves nothing behind. You consider that. Then ask, and what should I leave? He finally meets your gaze. A question. You nod. Then ask, why does everyone know I'm coming? He smiles. Because you ride with silence, and silence carries farther than stories. You offer him a coin. He refuses. Instead, he gives you a small scroll tied with green thread. You'll know when to read it. You accept it. Behind you, someone chuckles. You turn. No one. You mount again, more questions in your pocket, then answers. By afternoon, you reach a row of date palms beside a ruined watchtower. The wind is sharp here, hissing through cracks in stone. You stop for shade. A woman rests against the tower, her scarf wrapped high across her face. She nods at your camel, then at you. You're late, she says. I was early an hour ago. She chuckles. Time bends on these roads. You sit beside her. I lost something, she says. What? She hesitates. Then, the habit of trusting strangers. You look at her. Should I help you find it? She shakes her head. Just don't make me regret talking. Mainstream fact, Persian travel culture emphasized the spoken word as a form of bonding between strangers. Poets, merchants, and mystics all believed that conversation on the road could be transformative. Silence, too, had a weight respected when shared with intention. You share silence with her, the kind that feels like music, not emptiness. Then she asks, do you know what the camels are afraid of? You shrug. Nothing, she says, but they still run. Later, she leaves without a goodbye. You open the scroll the old man gave you. It reads, when your shadow disappears, you are either in darkness or finally standing in the light. That night you camp under an acacia tree. The stars are clearer than ever. Your camel curls its legs beneath itself and finally sighs like even it has accepted that the journey is longer than the destination. You sleep lightly and dream of a mirror. This time it reflects not the sun, but you looking back and smiling. The morning brings a breeze that smells faintly of myrrh and dust, like an incense burner forgotten at the edge of a shrine. You don't pack right away. For once, you allow yourself the strange luxury of stillness. The desert hasn't changed overnight, but something inside you feels lighter. Maybe it's the scroll. Maybe it's the silence from yesterday. Maybe it's just that the wind is finally at your back. You stand slowly and let your gaze sweep the horizon. No destination tugs harder than the present moment. And yet, as always, your camel starts walking before you. Do as if it too remembers that comfort is not a place, but a rhythm. The sound of hooves crunching gravel becomes a kind of heartbeat. You pass through dry brush, scattered skeletons of acacia and tamarisk. Then you see it. Another inn. But this one is different. Low, flat, and made of mud brick the color of cinnamon, with doors that look too small, and windows that seem to blink in and out of view as you approach. It's not abandoned, but it's quiet, like it doesn't want to be noticed. You tie your camel outside and duck through the low doorway. Inside, you're met not by a host or a merchant, but by a wall full of locks. Dozens of them, iron and brass and even bone, each hanging from a hook with a different carved emblem. No two are alike. Mainstream fact: certain Persian caravanserais developed elaborate lock and token systems, not only to safeguard rooms, but also to prevent camel theft. Guests would be issued symbolic tokens, usually engraved bronze slivers, matching their camel's bridal charm. Without the correct match, the animal could not be claimed from the stable. These early tokenized systems prefigured more modern guest tracking and inventory security. You walk farther in and find the owner, a woman of indeterminate age eyes, like flint hands, busy carving a wooden camel. "You'll want a token," she says without looking up. "How do you know I have a camel?" She finally glances at you. "Only fools walk here, and you don't smell like a fool." She tosses you a token. It's bone carved into a camel's face, but with two horns. You frown. "This one's wrong." She shrugs. "Or it's rare." You step outside and hold it next to your camel's charm, not a perfect match, but close. Historians still argue whether these token systems were standard or improvised by particular regions. Some believe they were a reflection of larger legal frameworks forming around commerce and trust. Others argue they were simply practical, locally invented solutions in areas where law didn't reach. You stay the night. The inn's walls are thick enough to muffle even your own thoughts. No one else speaks, but someone plays an instrument late into the night, a santur, its tones like falling stars tapping tile. You dream again. This time you're a camel. But you're watching yourself from behind, plodding forward step after step, with a string of travelers tied loosely behind you. One of them holds a mirror, another a scroll, and one more, a lock with no key. You wake suddenly, and your token is gone. You search your bag, your robes, the dirt around your sleeping mat. Nothing. Your heart beats faster, not out of fear for your camel, but for the meaning you'd already assigned to the object. You return to the wall of locks and find one that's open. No token, just an empty hook and a single carved phrase on the wood above. When the guardian trusts you, the gate need not close. You leave before dawn, your camel waiting as always, unfazed. But you glance back one last time, and in the dust outside the inn, you see hoof prints that aren't your camel's. Big, fresh, leading nowhere. You never see the inn again. But sometimes you hear the santur in the wind. The road ahead hums under your sandals, warm, cracked, and somehow welcoming, like a loaf just pulled from an old earthen oven. The sun's already halfway up the sky by the time you pass the ruins of an aqueduct, its broken arches casting striped shadows across the sand. A few scrubby bushes fight for space along a trickling stream beside it. The water's real, cool. You kneel, splash your face, and blink away the salt of a dozen mornings. You're not far from your destination now. And though you can't name that destination, you sense it like the weight of a coin in your pocket, small, solid, and oddly reassuring. The final caravanserai comes into view just past noon, its gate flanked by two square towers that seem to lean slightly inward, as if conspiring. You're met by a young girl with a basket of mint, who wordlessly hands you a sprig. Not a greeting, not a gift, just a ritual. You tuck it behind your ear and smile. Inside the courtyard is larger than any before. A central pool ripples from a gentle breeze, and a fountain shaped like a lion gurgles water from its mouth. You sit on the warm flagstone and breathe. You're not alone. Dozens of travelers rest nearby, some sleeping, some playing chess with bottle caps, one practicing lines from a traveling play. Mainstream fact: many major Persian caravanserais served not just as rest stops, but as cultural crossroads, hosting performers, philosophers, even informal courts. They were engines of intellectual exchange, especially along the Silk Road, where Chinese paper, Indian mathematics, and Arab medicine collided under Persian roofs. A man in a green robe sits beside you without asking. He offers no name, just a story about a city where roses only bloom at midnight, and how a blind man once described them better than any cited poet. His voice is like molasses and memory. You listen because that's what people do at the end of long journeys. Quirky tidbit: some caravanserais had echo points, architectural anomalies where whispered words from one archway could travel clearly to another across the courtyard. They became popular spots for secret gossip, impromptu therapy, and the occasional marriage proposal. It's said that one merchant used it to practice conversations with the wife he hadn't met yet. You walk the grounds as evening folds around the stone. You run your hands along etched bricks, some signed by builders long gone, others marked with strange symbols, part merchant code, part superstition, part joke. You even find a bench carved with a phrase you recognize from a childhood lullaby. Historians still argue whether these sayings were copied across regions or grew independently like folklore converging. Was there a network of poetic masons, or just a common longing carved into every resting place? You watch the sun slide behind the western arch. A boy runs past chasing a hoop. A woman sews by firelight, her needle a flicker of silver. Your camel snores nearby, curled like a boulder. And now the final story unfolds without words. The sky deepens to velvet. Lanterns bloom one by one. The fountain softens its song. You close your eyes and let the moment stretch long and slow, like dough in a rising bowl. It's been a journey through desert's garden scrolls and stones. You've walked among ancient trees and trusted strangers with locks and laughter. You've tasted the dust of forgotten dreams and smelled the mint of silent welcomes. And though you're still in motion, something inside you rests now, finally fully. Because you've seen what Persian gardeners knew, all along paradise isn't a place. It's the pause between two steps, the breath before the gate, the coolness in a leaf's shadow. It's the stillness you carry even when the sand moves beneath you. The night air cradles you, now soft, weightless, and wrapped in the warmth of everything you've seen. The stars have resumed their quiet choreography above, blinking gently like old friends on watch. Somewhere in the distance, a lute plucks a lullaby you don't know yet, somehow remember. You shift on your mat, feeling the woven fibers. Beneath your fingertips, the faint imprint of the journey in your muscles. Every sound is muted, now the occasional yawn of a camel, the whisper of cloth, in motion the subtle drip of water returning to the earth. The caravanserai sleeps, and you too are invited. Let your breath slow like footsteps fading into sand. Let the images drift pools and pomegranates, fountains and locks, mint sprigs and stone benches worn smooth by time. Feel your body grow heavy, but not burdened, just anchored gently like a boat waiting for morning. There's nothing more to chase tonight, no road left to follow, just the garden you carry within, just the cool air on your face, just the memory of a voice saying, the gate need not close. You're safe now. And the journey continues, but only in dreams. Good night, traveler.